Okay, so I know that you could probably figure this answer out in any number of ways, but let's get this straight. This whole exercise is to create an equation that when you solve for the variable, it gets you the answer. So, very first step, these are my three basic steps that'll get you through most story problems. So, very first thing, define your variable. What's that mean? Well, let's see. Shanna won 128 super bouncy balls playing the beanbag toss at her school's game night. Okay. Later, she gave four to each of her friends. She only has eight remaining. How many friends does she have? Okay. So that's what they want. That's what your variable is going to be. So when we solve it, it'll tell us how many friends you have. So define your variable. Let's just say F is going to be the number of friends Shayna has. Okay. The number of friends she has. So if I can make an equation, it's got F in it. When I solve it, it's going to tell us how many she has. Make notes about what's going on in this thing. Well, let's see. She won 128 bouncy balls. So I understand that that's Shanna. She won 128 balls. Okay. Playing a beanbag toss at her school's night game. We don't even need to look at that. So Shayna won. I don't need super bouncy. Shanna won 128 balls. Uh, and then what happens? Later, that's later, that's important. She gave four to each of her friends. And let's see, gave four to each friend, Okay, I apologize for my handwriting looking so awful. And then she only has eight remaining. So after she gave away four to each friend, she only has eight left. Okay, so what happened first? She won 128 bouncy balls. So there we go. There's 128. That's the bouncy balls right there. Okay, I've used this piece of information. Then she gives away four to each friend. So I'm going to take away four that she gives to each friend. Well, if I times four by the number of friends she has, that's how many she has given away. So 4F, that's giving four to each friend. Now, why am I subtracting? Because I'm taking away from the 128 she won before. This is 4, and F is just standing for the number of friends she has. So if she had two friends, that would mean she'd only gave away 8 balls, and then that would be 120 left over. However, I know that she gave away so many of these things that she only has 8 left over. So there we go, 8 balls left over. So I've sifted through this data. I've defined my variable. I know the F stands for the number of friends that she has, um, or at least the number of friends she gave the four bouncy balls to. And so now we can just solve this equation in our typical fashion. Let's see. Let's subtract 128 on both sides. I know it seems weird at first, but you have to have faith. A little bit of faith goes a long way. 128, take away 128, leaves us negative 4f, or negative 4 times f. And this would be negative 120. Divide both sides of the equation by negative 4, and you quickly find out that, you know what, f is equal to 30. So Shayna has 30 friends. How many friends does she have? She has 30 friends. It just takes practice. Let's go through and look at another one. Okay, so first thing, really, we need to read the problem. Maria won 42 pieces of gum playing horseshoes at her school's game night. Later, she gave two to each of her friends. She only has four remaining. How many friends does she have? So, uh, what's it asking for? They want to know how many friends Maria has. So let's define our variable. They want to know the number of friends, so let's just use F. That way it'll help us remember that the variable stands for the number of friends that Maria has. Make notes of what's going on. Okay, no problem. Maria won 42 pieces of gum playing horseshoes at her school's game night. So we really don't need to know this anymore. We just want to know how many friends she has. She won 42 pieces of gum playing. So let's make a note down here for this. Later, that means after she won the gum, she gave two to each of her friends. So let's make a note of that. And then the last thing is she has four pieces left over. So that's the very last piece of information. Has four pieces left. So it kind of goes in the order that it occurs. She won 42 pieces. She gave two pieces to each of her friends, and now she's got four pieces left over. So let's just make the equation as we go. Let's piece it together. Okay, she won 42 pieces of gum, and then she gave two pieces to each friend. She's giving these 42 pieces of gum away, so two pieces to each friend. Two times the number of friends. We don't know how many friends it is. This will work though. And then she has four left over. There's our equation. Now we can just solve. 42 minus 42. Let's see, that would be negative 38. And now divide both sides by negative 2. And that gets us back into the nice territory of a positive number because you can't have a negative number of friends. It has to be a positive number, or at least a 0. Um, F equals 19. What does F stand for? The number of friends. So Maria has 19 friends. That's the answer that we're looking for right there. I love this problem. Wilbur spent half of his weekly allowance on candy. To earn more money, his parents let him weed the garden for $4. That's a bargain for the parents. And what is his weekly allowance if he ended with $9? So what do they want? Define the variable. What is his weekly allowance? Well, let's use W, and that's going to equal uh, Wilbur's weekly allowance. All right, make notes about what's going on. Wilbur spent half of his weekly allowance. All right, so um, and you know what? I could have just put W because W equals his weekly allowance. So I could have just made a note, spent half of W, and then that would help him remember what the W stands for. So he spent half of it on candy. To earn more, he got $4 weeding the garden. So got four more dollars weeding. Okay, and he ended the week with $9 before his next little weekly payday. Ended with a total of $9. And they just want to know, well, fine, what's his weekly allowance? So let's go through and look at this. First off, he got his allowance and he blew half of it on candy. Okay. Then he got a little desperate, needed some more money, so he earned a whopping $4 to go weeding. And now, if we add the remaining part of his allowance with the $4, he's got a total of $9. So it goes in this order. How can I show his weekly allowance? The W. So anytime I'm looking at his weekly allowance, which I don't know what it is, I'm going to use this variable. And it's going to be very key there. So this allowance right here, he spent half of it on candy. How can I show something is being divided by 2 or being half of it? Did you catch what I just said, being divided by 2? Oh, yeah, there's the allowance. There's half of it divided by 2. Now, what's he do? He goes and gets more money. So is that going to make it go up? Yeah, so we're going to add $4 to the remaining half of his allowance, and he's got $9 total now. So this is your two-step equation. Minus 4 minus 4. W is divided by 2. 9 minus 4 is 5. Now we can just multiply both sides by 2. And guess what? I know that W is 10. So Wilbur, I'm just going to use a W there, has a weekly allowance of $10. All right, how many did he have on Monday? What are we talking about? Posters? All right, so P will equal the number of posters that Tasakin has. Okay. Now, if you have trouble pronouncing a name, an equation, let's just call them by the first letter. How many posters does T have? Well, on Tuesday, T bought, let's make a note here. He bought, T bought 8 posters. Okay. On Wednesday, half of the posters were destroyed. Well, that's not cool. And then on Thursday, only had 14 left. So it's just kind of a boom, boom, boom process. What happened first? Well, first off, he bought 8 posters. Okay. Um, then he lost half of the posters, and then he only had 14 left over. How many did he have on Monday? And so let's just put Monday right here. How many? So basically this P right here is that's how many he had to start with, then he added 8 to them, lost half of all of them, and then he only had 14 left over. This is a very tricky thing though. How can I show that uh, well on Tuesday he had the amount of posters he had and then added 8 to it, and then somehow I've got to divide this whole thing by by 2 or something to show that he lost half of it. How can I show that I divided this whole thing by half? Um, well, how about we just divide the whole thing by half? And then he only had 14 left over. So how would I do it? How would I solve this? Well, since p plus 8 is being divided by 2, just multiply it by 2. Multiply the other side by 2. This p plus 8 is left over. It's freed now. P plus 8 equals 28 minus 8 minus 8. P will equal 20. So how many posters did he have on Monday? He had 20 posters. Then he bought 8 more. Okay, so that gets me 28. Then he lost half of them in a fire, basically. And because I mean, again, I used the word half of all the posters. So 28 divided by 2, yeah, that'd be half. That left me with 14, so it checks out. So our equation is just this. The original amount of posters plus the 80 bought on Tuesday. Then the fire got all of those, or at least half of all of his posters, and he wound up having only 14. So there's your equation, and that's how we would solve.